author, professor, coach, consultant, mentor, real estate broker with Century 21 Explorer REVITALIZE Inc., Ontario Business Journalist, columnist, novelist, and urban guru. Wow. Ottawa Business Journal consultant, Professor Bruce is an effective keynote speaker for organizations with positive focus on creating opportunities for the stakeholder group. Firestone also advises counties, towns, and cities, as well as economic development agencies, on how to develop, live, work, play, learn, shop, grow, make, build affordable, diversified, sustainable, visible, neo-urbanist communities based on the principle that nothing is sustainable unless it is also economically sustainable. He has a PhD in urban economics from the Australian National University of Canterbury and his Master of Engineering Science from the University of New South Wales in Sydney, as a civil engineering degree with McGill University in Montreal. His twin mottos are making impossible possible, for every home a job. Please welcome Bruce Firestone.
Thank you, Don, and thank you, Thunder Bay. It's my fourth trip here, and you know why I think you guys are superior by nature? It's not what you think it is. I think this is one of the friendliest towns, and that is something that you can use to create a sustainable community. I'm going to talk a lot about how to create a sustainable community, and just the friendly nature of Thunder Bay, the cab driver, the people here in the hotel, and the convention center, Miss Oliver, and all of you have shown me great hospitality. Fourth time with Thunder Bay. Today what we're going to talk about is how proactive government can turn around practically any city, town, or village, not just here in Canada and the United States, but all around the world. I do this kind of work pretty much everywhere. And I am a huge believer in small towns. They have a big future. A lot of people don't agree with me, but I work in a lot of small towns, and I brought a few case studies for you to show you some of that work. Here's an example of what I think is a really important factor for each of you, mayors, councilors, economic development officers, planners, whatever, to think about carefully. This is Nicole Deeker. She is a writer, a creative person, and she thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to leave my small town, I'm going to move to the West Coast or the left coast, and I'm going to live in Seattle. And I'm going to live in a loft apartment, I'm going to have a coffee shop, I'm going to ride my bike everywhere, and my life is going to be super great. And she says the best $5,929.10 that she ever spent was moving back home. Why? During her 5 years in Seattle, her rent doubled, okay? And she lived in this horrible moldy apartment, which, if you know something about living in moldy apartments, is very bad for your health. And she wanted to be closer to her parents, and that's something that's a very strong, I see this over and over again, strong bond that you can use to bring your most important resource to young people to come back to your community, be close to their parents. But here's the thing, they have to have lots of opportunity in your town, in your city, and I'm going to talk a lot about that. So now what's her life like? She lives in a loft-style apartment, which she could never afford in Seattle. There's a coffee shop on the ground floor. She rides her bike. She has a career she loves. She makes the same income in Cedar Rapids as she did in Seattle, but her living costs are about 1/5. And she's part of a creative theater troupe, which she loves to do. Some of you may know the work of Malcolm Gladwell. He's one of the most important thinkers in the world today. This Canadian living in New York. And he says the single most important thing a city, a town, a village can do is to provide a community, underline the community, where interesting, smart people want to live with their families. That sounds very obvious, but it's not always obvious. In Ottawa, we had a 20-year period where we tried, that's my hometown, where we tried to attract entrepreneurs from away to come and do some development, technology or whatever in our city. We had Michael Dell come and build 2 huge towers in Ottawa and fill it full of technology people, and then 2 years later Michael said, forget it. But if he was living in Ottawa instead of Austin, he might have made a different decision. Here's a friend of mine, Carolyn Butts. She moved 20 years ago to a small town in Ontario called Tamworth. Anybody know Tamworth? You can see how small it is. Okay, we got one person who knows where Tamworth is. Carolyn moved there 20 years ago, And between 2011 and 2016, population increased by 142 people. That doesn't sound like very much, but if it's the right 142 people, it makes a huge difference. What she did was she started to buy up buildings that she could buy very inexpensively. There's an old garage that she bought for $20,000. It's 25,000 square feet. She converted it into maker spaces. That's the modern word for workshop. Most of us, if you're my age, would know it as a workshop, maker spaces. And she turned it into themed apartments where creative people from Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, from New York, and from other parts of the world could come and spend 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 2 months or 3 months and rent her Airbnb accommodation, rent one of her workshops, live very inexpensively, and do some interesting creative work. And Carolyn wrote me late last year this. Small town revitalization is a subject that occupies our thoughts and energy daily. I came to Tamworth, as I said, 20 years ago, and a few years later she met Hans, and he moved there in 2005. So again, attracting entrepreneurs to come and live in your community, extremely important. And then we've just returned from a drive across Canada. We noticed this country is awash in empty towns and villages. Then she goes on to say, excuse me, our situation is unique because we have built our business with minimal investment, just using our sweat equity. In that last line, she's actually not correct. Entrepreneurs, by the very definition of what an entrepreneur is somebody with skills and luck and energy, but maybe not a whole lot of money. She is not unique in that, but she has completely changed the future of Tamworth. One entrepreneur with sweat equity, labor and skills. So one of the things that I talk about in Canada, the United States, overseas in Sweden, and in Australia, and many other countries, is building your brand. And so, you know, if anybody's a realtor in here, you look at a house like this, its curb appeal is kind of fairly modest. Same thing goes for your towns. If you go to the eastern townships in Quebec, you'll see how house-proud people are. Every house is encouraged to paint the house and do interesting things with their front yards, do crazy sculptures and put out weird street furniture and do really cool things. Make places that people actually want to come to and talk to each other, right? Talking to each other. We're in the people business. And in many parts of the world, and in many cities and towns, they ban things like murals. I like art, I love murals. But in many parts of Canada, the United States, many of us have zoning bylaws that say, oh no, you can't have murals, no, you can't do that here. But look at that. In Philadelphia, they have something called the Mural Arts Program, the MAP program. It's a huge tourist attraction. And they have got graffiti artists off the street to create murals. People come from all over to do walking tours of Philadelphia murals. Here in Detroit, they're trying an experiment with phone booths. They turn phone booths in, when was the last time anybody in this room used a phone booth, right? Yes, nobody. It's been a long time. They turn phone booths into lending libraries. So take a book, leave a book, and people then put out street furniture, and then they go and they're reading, and then they talk to their neighbors. They're building a community, and that's the basis upon which to build something sustainable. And we used to build homes that had front porches. So people could sit on the front porch, wave hello. And my kids, I had 5 kids, 2 boys and 3 girls, and when they were little, they wanted to play in the front yard. They wanted to play in the street. They didn't want to play in the backyard because they wanted to see and be seen, right? Instead, we put garages there, right, and RVs. And I walked around Thunder Bay for about an hour today getting ready to do this, right? You get a lot of RVs in this town. So what are some of the policy prescriptions? I want you to try and attract entrepreneurs to live in your community, not just visit, live in your community. You'll attract kids who will want to return home to be close to their parents and their friends if they can find some opportunities, start businesses, get a job, and if they can afford to buy or rent a house. And there's going to be some cool things to do. Now I had a discussion over here with Erwin, the mayor, and a couple of his councilors a few minutes ago. This is probably the toughest job for the people in this room, and probably any city around the world today. And that is to get citizen buy-in. It's really hard to do that. Anybody know what this is here? This is an artist's sketch of a perspective museum. Anybody know what that is? Anybody want to guess? Does it look like a spaceship? Well, you gotta speak up. Lucas went to LA, Chicago, and San Francisco and said, I will fund $1.5 billion fund, a Star Wars museum in your town. Not only will I fund the capital expenses, I will fund the operating costs. And all three towns turned him down. And here's why. Here's a professor of urban studies, Mitchell Moss. Dr. Moss said, George Lucas's problem is that he keeps going after these premier urban sites. He needs to trade down. Are you freaking kidding me? What do you think if George came here, Mr. Lucas came here and said, I'm going to put it in Thunder Bay? What do you think? What would Florida be like? What would Orlando be like if Walt had been refused or turned down when he wanted to put Disney World in Florida? It'd be a very different place, very different economy. So I'm here to announce that George Lucas is going to put his museum in Thunder Bay. You can see it on the screen. So this is really why I think this is the most fundamental thing that we as urban planners, urban designers, urban economists, planners, economic development officers, mayors, councilors, you name it, all of us involved in. It's really because of the not my backyard thing, or the cave thing, or the banana thing that I heard about a few minutes ago. And NIMBY is based on two of the most important and most fundamental emotions that humans have, which is greed and fear. Every time somebody says they're going to put a new building in one of your cities or towns, it brings forth these emotions. Greed and fear. Greed is because, oh my gosh, if you put some social housing half a kilometer away from my house, my property values are going to go down. You put a convenience store, teenagers will go there, there'll be garbage, my property values will go down. So they're greedy in the sense that they are fearful their property values are going to go down. And we have to prove, all of us have to work to prove that that's wrong. Here's a neighborhood in central Ottawa called the Glebe. If any of you have been to Ottawa, it's a desirable neighborhood to live in. They have some beautiful houses. They have some infill development. They have stores, they have condos, they have office towers. They even have a football stadium where the Ottawa Red Blacks play, and an arena where the 67s play. And you can imagine today, if I came to your neighborhood and said, I'm going to put a stadium there, or I'm going to put an office tower there, there might be a few NIMBYs coming out and yelling at you and at me. But in the Glebe, property values haven't gone down. This is a client of mine, a young woman. She owns a pub in the Glebe, about a block and a half from this house at 27 Mum Street. 27 Mum Street is an Airbnb, and it's also a co-working space. Co-working space are like many offices, but today they're called co-working spaces. So it's a little bit of a mixed use. So it's got a residential component, and it's got a commercial component. And I just wanted to look at some numbers. So when I knew it was coming here, so in February, I did some analysis. When she bought it, it was $385,000 to buy that property in 2012. And by 2019, in January of this year, Steve Harmon, who's a very good appraiser, appraised it at $685,000. And that's a really big increase. 8.58% compounded change per annum. That's compound interest. What did Dr. Einstein say was the greatest, most powerful force in the universe? Everybody thought he was going to say fission or fusion or something new. He said, no, it's compound interest. And I'm going to prove that to you. I showed Kara, the young woman who owns this property, I said, so in 2019 at $685,000, if it continues to grow at 8.58% compounded, in 20 years, 2039, she's only 40, so by the time she's 60, it'll be worth $3.5 million. She said, that can't possibly be right. But it is. If all of us went back in time to 1950 and we talked to somebody who bought a $25,000 townhouse or brownstone in the Distillery District in Toronto, we said, in 2019, that's going to be worth $1.5 million. They would have called the ambulance to take us away. It's impossible, can't be happening, but it is. And I'm also here to tell you that this is a picture of me, that I'm always in trouble, okay? I'm always in trouble. I am a strong believer in the building code. I follow the building code as if it was a religion. It's very important that we build things that are safe. I get that. But zoning bylaws, maybe not so much. Yeah, I don't think there are any urban planners here. Otherwise, I would have heard booze there. So I have a garage office, okay? I converted my garage. And the reason I did that was I was paying about $13,000 a year to work out of a co-working space. And I thought, well, what the heck, I can save that money. And I work for a living, like I'm sure all of you do. And so I saved $13,200 by doing this. 2 weeks after I moved into my garage office, the bylaw officer knocked on my door and said, Mr. Firestone, you can't have living space in your garage. You're going to have to remove, your desk and your computer. And I thought about it for a minute. I said, no, I don't think I'm going to do that. And he said, well, I'm going to have to fine you. I said, oh, really? How much? He said, $500. I said, $500, wow. But I said, no, I don't think you should fine me $500. Because if you do, I won't pay it. He said, well, go on your property tax if you don't pay it. We'll tax it at your home. I said, no, I don't think he'll do that either. I know you're not going to tell me who complained. All these cities have these 1-800 rat lines, right? Right? You can rat your neighbor out. And I said, so before you do that, go back and talk to my neighbor who complained and say, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to appeal to the Committee of Adjustment for a minor variance so I can have my garage office. And if that doesn't work, I'll go to the Ontario Municipal Board or the Tribunal today. And if that doesn't work, I'll go to the Divisional Court. And you tell my neighbor, whoever it is, that I understand, I'm not asking you who it is, because you won't tell me anyway. But in Divisional Court, or at the OMB, or at any other judicial process, they cannot be anonymous. They have to look me in the eye and tell me why I can't earn a living. And then to top it off, I said to the bylaw officer, I said, also, let's just pretend for a moment, this is not a desk and a computer. Let's pretend it's a table and a saw. How many men and women have workshops in their garage? He said, I don't know. I said, I bet you there's 30,000. So you're telling me you're going to go to 30,000 people who have a workshop in their garage and tell them to take their stuff out of their garage? I don't think so. 4.5 years later, it's still there. And then here's another building I own. I put a second driveway in, and this one here has a little side yard apartment, has main house and a side yard apartment. And I put this second driveway in for the tenant, because Ottawa is like the Giant's Garden, and it's always winter. And we've got to get our trucks and our cars off the road. So I did that. 2 weeks later, same bylaw officer, probably the same complainant, comes along and says, you've got an illegal driveway here. I said, no, I don't. It's hardscaping. Because if you notice, it doesn't go all the way to the street, and it's made out of flagstones. And I said, I'm not taking it up. And by now he knows I'm a stubborn SOB. And he's okay. And it's still there 4 years later. But that side yard apartment is worth $15,000 a year to my family. I have another property where I built this workshop. This is for my youngest son, and then he moved to Australia, the so-and-so, and he's got, my 2 little grandsons are living in Canberra. So I rented it to an artist. She lives a couple blocks away from me, and she makes wood pallet furniture out of wood pallets. She gets the wood pallets for free. Go to any movie company, they got stacks of it, they just burn them, and she goes and she gets it. She makes wonderful stuff, and she rents it, and she pays about $24,000 a year to my family. And sure enough, another bylaw officer, not the same one, comes along and says, yes, you can have the workshop, because of course we have a building permit for that, it meets the building code, but you can't, it's for home-based business. This lady lives 3 blocks away, you can't rent it to her. I said, well, let's go to court on that too. This is my wife, Dawn McMillan, and she runs a little Airbnb called The
Hideaway.
You guys are asleep. You had too much to eat. The Hideaway. And we turned another garage into a little living room. It's got a little gas fireplace in it, and it's got a little galley kitchen and a little lunch counter there, and you go around the corner. It's got a bedroom. It's got Wi-Fi and internet and Netflix and showcase and HBO, stack washer dryer, and a nice bathroom. And we rented on Airbnb. And it turns out our main client is pregnant women who have high-risk pregnancies, because we're a couple blocks from the Ottawa Civic Hospital, and the Hideaway gets leased for a month or 2 months to ladies who are going to give birth. And again, we got a complaint, and that we're not allowed to have this particular area of the city is not allowed to have Airbnb. And I said, well, I'm not taking this out either. And they said, well, you're taking away from affordable housing. I said, whoa. Now, wait a second. Let's talk about affordable housing. I happen to coach a number of affordable housing outfits. One of them is the Emily Murphy Nonprofit Housing Corporation in Ottawa that supplies housing for single moms. And those single moms pay $80 to $90 a month rent. That's it. That's all they can afford to pay, and that's what they pay. And I said, if you think my Airbnb unit or my wife's Airbnb unit is affordable housing, yeah, maybe we can't put it on Airbnb if you really clamp down on us, but we're gonna rent that out in Ottawa for about $1,000 a month. That's what a one-bedroom apartment goes for, not $80 a month. So I have a solution for affordable housing that I'm gonna show you a little bit later in the big reveal at the end of this presentation, unless I run out of time. But a lot of people are saying that we should turn our backs on the sharing economy, Lyft and Uber and skip the dishes and all these, and of course Airbnb. I don't agree with that. Another thing we do, I have a barn that I built 20 years ago. It's just kind of was a party place when my kids were little. It's huge. It's about 4,000 square feet. It's an Amish-style barn. I'm converting it to a place where I can do more coaching. And we're going to put 5 yurts there. These yurts cost, they run $365 a year, so they're good down to minus 25. The Mongols lived in them for 5,000 or 10,000 years. They've got a wood stove in them. You put the platform there, you put the tent on top. You can rent them for about $30,000 a year, okay? And it's like you guys buying a $400,000 house. A $40,000 yurt is equivalent to a $400,000 house that you can rent for $300,000 a year. If you guys find any of those houses in Thunder Bay, let me know. I'm buying them, okay? So, you kind of see where I'm going? Something else I get in trouble for, this would be my kids. We constantly are closing our street with our neighbors, and we're holding street parties. This is, we actually sketch out pickleball and paddle tennis courts on the street, and we close the street once a year, and we have, games and fun, and we all get together, and we are building a community, right? And there's always one or two people who complain to the file officer, and we get in trouble for that too. No comments about how young I look in this picture and how old I look today, because that's me on John Ziegler, the president of the NHL's right, and Phil Esposito on his left. So that's me when we got the NHL franchise from the Ottawa Senators. Mr. Ziegler awarded a franchise, the NHL awarded a franchise to Ottawa and to Tampa. Tampa went out this year in 4 games, and Ottawa did, I think we finished last. But I got in trouble for this too. I wanted to turn 600 acres of wet clay in the west end of Ottawa into a new town with thousands of jobs in buildings and retail and residential and of course an arena, which we did build. It cost me $3.5 million in legal fees and planning fees to get that approved. How long do you think it took me to do that? Any guesses? Come on. 3 years is a good guess. 62 months. Yeah, that's too long, guys. All right, so we're gonna switch gears. This is a friend of mine, unfortunately passed away in 2016. One of the world's great architects, Eric KUHNE. He was originally from Texas, but he's an expat living in London. And I went to visit him in London, England. And when you talk to somebody like Eric, it's like going to a Marshall McLuhan lecture in the 1970s, when he was saying things like the media is the message and those kinds of things. You knew you were in the presence of greatness, but you didn't understand anything. And he says to me at that breakfast meeting in London, he said, "Bruce, did you know that leisure is the new infrastructure?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, of course, yeah, right." I had no idea what he was talking about. But then I was giving a keynote about a year later in Renfrew, another small town. And I stopped at Sandy's Deli to get some directions. I couldn't find my way to the conference center, which turned out to be 2 blocks away. And I went into this is obviously a converted petrol station now. It's like a breakfast and lunch convenience. And I went in and I looked around. I saw all this asphalt outside. And I said to the owner after I asked him directions, I said, "Sir, did you know that leisure is the new infrastructure?" And he thought, well, I've got a really crazy man from Ottawa here in Renfrew. And I said, well, no, let me just explain what I'm talking about. You've got all that asphalt there. What if you were to dig that asphalt up and put in a couple of beach volleyball courts or a pickleball court or something like that, a leisure investment? Do you think those people would come and buy more coffee and more sandwiches? Yeah, maybe they would. Because that asphalt is just sitting there, right? Costing you money. And we've experimented with this over and over and over again. And Eric was right. 40 years ago, the best investment any of us could make in our cities and towns was more roads and water mains and sewers. Very important. And then 20 years later, the best investment we can make is in more internet infrastructure, very important. But today, the biggest economic multiplier is leisure investments. It has the greatest single economic multiplier that you can get and put into your town. So every project, whether it's some small project or large project, every office building, every industrial park, everything should have a leisure element to it, in my opinion. And that's really not my opinion, that's Eric's opinion, and I agree with him. So getting community buy-in is very important, turning NIMBY, not my backyard, into YIMBY, yes, in my backyard. And that takes political courage. It's really hard to face that. I've been in a room full of people bigger than this, 400 people all yelling at me, saying, I know where you live. I know what kind of car you drive, because they're not in favor of a particular project that I was working on. So I know what it's like. I know how daunting it can be. But without community buy-in, I think you're going to fail. And the way to get community buy-in is something called democracy. And democracy means that you appoint a facilitator, a moderator, somebody who's not sitting on council, somebody who's not working for the city or the town. And he or she calls together 60 citizens or 30 citizens or 100 citizens. They did this in Ireland when they were going to review the abortion laws. In Ireland, abortion almost under any circumstances was illegal. And it was very, very, very controversial. And so what they did was they got, I think, a Supreme Court judge to bring together 100 people from all, from the church and from others, from activists of all sides of the spectrum, and they all sat around and they kept them in a room until finally they came up with something that everybody could buy in. And that's how to solve the NIMBY problem, in my opinion. I was saying how important it is for entrepreneurs to come and live in your community. This is Joe Kowalski. Joe owns Wilderness Tours in a very small town or village, Beachburg, in Ontario, population of about 900. And he's originally from Pennsylvania, and he served in Vietnam. After he came back home, he looked around and said he wanted to find a country where maybe he didn't have to go to war every 3.5 years. And that wasn't the United States, right? So he came to Ontario, and he started his whitewater rafting business, and he goes up and down the Ottawa, and you can see some of the rapids here. It's about 3.5 rapids, so decent rapids. And he has built Wilderness Tours into an incredible business. About 3,000 people come here, high-income people from Toronto, from Ottawa, from Montreal, from New York, and from other parts, New England states. They come here every weekend in the summer. Imagine the employment implications of having somebody do this in your community, right? 3,000 people visiting a town or a village of 900 people for about 150 days a year, right? It's amazing. But, Joe doesn't just visit. He lives there. He's a well-to-do individual, but he has a very modest house. He lives in Beachburg. He's part of the community. They have a kayak school too. And didn't Joe ask Beachburg or Canada or the Coast Guard or Quebec or Ontario for permission to start his whitewater rafting business? What do you guys think? No. He asked a farmer upstream, can I put a couple of rafts in? I'll give you a couple of pizzas. Can I asked another farmer downstream, can I take the rafts out here? And they said, sure, I'll give your family a ride for free. And then he grew this huge business, and then somebody said, well, where's your permit? That was 25 years later. So the real question I'm challenging you guys to is, can your county, your township, your town, your village, your council, your city council, your town council, can your planners, your economic development people, can they adapt to the gig economy? Can you actually adapt to entrepreneurs? And maybe the answer is no. But if the answer is no, you should tell people that. Don't make them spend 62 months and $3.5 million, right? Trying to get their project approved. And the thing that I show up here in red, if you can read it from the back of the room, is I really think you should retask somebody in every one of your towns to become a facilitator. A facilitator with power. That's if you decide that this is something that you want to do. Like there's some towns, I know I work with some towns, they say, no, we're good. We're getting smaller, we're getting older, we're all gonna die. We get that. There's gonna be nobody here, they're gonna turn off the lights, but we're fine. that is a real deal. There are communities like that. And I talk to them and I realize I'm not getting a job there, right? But if you decide that that's not your future, appoint a facilitator. Retask somebody who's already working for you, and that facilitator, his or her job is to work with entrepreneurs who come to your community and find ways to break through the logjam of planning and zoning and site plan and everything else. I'll just give you another example. I coach, I do some real estate investment and business coaching. I like doing it. I'm going to do it until St. Peter calls me back, to heaven, hopefully. And I like doing it, but I do about 2 or 3 pro bono assignments a year. I can do more, it's just I'm too old now, I can't do more than that. So here's an example of 2 young people I'm working with today, Kayla and JC. Kayla's a young mom with 2 kids, 2 little kids, and JC is a carpenter, makes $18 an hour. We found this site, it's in a little village of Kern. I don't think it has more than 400 people. I don't know if you can really see it on there, but it has 2 farm fields of about 20 acres. It has a 5,000 tree woodlot on the right-hand side of your screen, and it has a house with a whole bunch of outbuildings. I'll show you that in a minute. But it's really not in the middle of nowhere. When we looked at it, it's really close to Calypso, which is a water park in another small town called Limoges. It's about 15 minutes from Limoges. And I said to Kayla and JC, aha, potential here. So here's the farmhouse. It has lots of doors to the outside, so it has tremendous opportunity to have micro suites, maybe a basement apartment, all kinds of cool stuff can be done with the house. It's got all these outbuildings that I mentioned. You'll see it here. And here's poor JC carrying his baby, and Kayla and me in behind taking pictures as we go through the snow in Ottawa, where it's 11 months of winter. What's that?
That's you.
And so you can see some more of these outbuildings. And so one of the things they're going to do is they're going to adapt a Russian idea. I know the Russians aren't particularly popular these days, but there's an old, 1,000-year-old Russian idea, which is called the Russian Dashnik movement, which is, Dashnik is just a Russian word for gardener. They're going to divide those farm fields up into micro gardens, and you can get a micro garden, you can get a bunkie, and you can be 20 minutes or 15 minutes away from Calypso. For 113 days a year, they're going to be just dynamite. This is something that is occurring across the world today. The Grow Local movement, you've heard of it, I'm sure. It's called the Backyard Homestead movement. And I did a little work last year in Portugal. This is another tiny village I was working in called Pinhão. And virtually every house in Pinhão has a backyard homestead. You can see it here. Now, this is unbelievable when you look at this spreadsheet. And I don't normally want to do a keynote and have lots of spreadsheets, right? But here's one. This is what JC and Kayla can do with this property. A micro suite, a basement apartment, the main house, they've got a tiny house, a couple of these yurts that I talked about, the micro gardens, the bunkies, they can generate, it'll take about 4 or 5 years to get there, they'll generate about $15,000 or $16,000 a month in gross income from this property. That is a life-changing event for somebody who makes $18 an hour and supports his wife and 2 children. And it's a lot of leisure uses, right? You guys got that? Right? Thank you, Eric. Just a little departure. Everybody here, if you want, we're going to get, we're going to send them, right? NOMA will send you guys Don't Back Down, which is a book I wrote for the 25th anniversary of the founding of the Ottawa Senators. And you're also going to get a book, if you want, called Business Model Illustrations, Real Estate, Investment, and Personal Business for Life Mini Case Studies. And when I say they're mini, they're really mini. Right? They're just little, a lot of the books I write are like 300 or 400 pages, but I wrote this one for you. Right? 67 pages, so you get through it in a hurry. But a lot of the ideas that I talk about, it's free, everybody will get a copy, right? If you want, you'll get a copy. Thank you. That's very nice of you, thank you. So there's 3 business case studies and 7 real estate ones, and I think you'll enjoy it, but a lot of the concepts I'm talking about are in there. So what are some of the policy prescriptions here? Coaching and mentoring does matter. It's not just that I'm a good coach, I believe I am, and a good mentor. It's something that you can do, because I'm all about doing low-cost, Fairly simple things to implement, and one of the things that you could do is you could organize for skills transfers from people who are my age, older, younger, to younger people. And I think your city and your town and your village should do that. You've got a lot of people in your village, in your town, in your city with tremendous skills, and that's a perfect match with somebody younger, right? And capital will flow, right? They'll invest, they'll mentor, they'll coach, and coach businesses and mentor businesses. Kayla and JC will buy that place. They've got it tied up now for $440,000, and they can earn $15,000 or $16,000 a month. They could not do that on their own without coaching. So create a committee of coaches and mentors. Be a matchmaker. You know, what is it, plentyoffish.com? But for mentors and coaches, right? Anybody know where this is?
Bedford Falls, New York.
Yeah, Bedford Falls, New York. It doesn't actually exist. Where does it exist? In our minds. It's a wonderful life, right? Jimmy Stewart, he still haunts Bedford Falls. Come on, you've all seen the movie. Now let's look at that. How are we doing for time? How are we doing?
You got 20 minutes.
20 minutes left? Well, I better hurry. So, Bedford Falls. Let's look at this for a moment. You've got a boulevard there, and you've got trees down that boulevard. You've got places for people to sit. They've got lighting. They've got stores and activity at grade. They've got apartments above grade. They've got two-way traffic. They've got sidewalks. They've got an interesting, beautiful public room. Places that people want to live. Not just young people, but people like us. And here's what zoning codes do for us today. So you have a choice, right? Modern zoning rules do this. Here's one of the premier addresses in the city of Ottawa, Richmond Road. Okay? That's considered a premier address in Ottawa, Richmond Road. That's a Paris streetscape, right? We have to look at our zoning codes and our official plan. I'm working with the city of Ottawa on their official plan that's due out in 2021. A lot of the concepts that I'm talking about today, we're going to try and get into that official plan. We're trying to do the first official plan in Canada, maybe in the United States too, that really is suited to the 21st century gig economy. Here's some pictures I took when I was working in Portugal, and I'm just going to talk about one. You notice how every summer, this is in another small town called Olio, they just bring out chairs and put a stage there, and they have concerts and they do plays and the kids can use it. What do you call it? Open mic, they can do that. Imagine if I came to your neighborhood and said, hey, I'm going to do this in your neighborhood. You'd have 300 people yelling at you and at me, right? We've got to get buy-in. The Portuguese love kids. I love kids. Anybody here hate kids? Oh, a couple people put up their hands. Oh, I have to share it with you. I had 3 teenage daughters. I would have given them away for 3 more boys. But now they're in their 20s, I love them. But everywhere you go in Portugal, they would do something like this. They would put playlands in the middle of their town and their neighborhoods. If you did that here in Thunder Bay, or you did that certainly in my hometown, you'd get 300 people yelling at you, oh, you can't have that, there'll be noise. But when I lived next to a school for many years, and when I would open my window on a spring day, and I'd hear those beautiful sounds of young children laughing and shouting, I love that sound, you know? So I'm all in favor of that. The Dutch have a term for streets, living streets called wooners. Just means living street. You can see that on the left-hand side of the screen. And I get all the time, I say, oh no, we can't build streets like that. We've got to have streets that are 60 meters wide here in Canada because we got snow. I said, no, not so fast. That's Quebec City. They've been dealing, they have Wooners streets, trust me, in Quebec City. You would touch one block of that city, of that street in Quebec City, people would be on you. So yes, you have to have little tiny snow plows and go in there and clear those streets, but we can do it. Come on, we're Canadians. And it was a friend of mine who came up with this idea for these Wooners roads. How do we turn our streets into money makers? And this is my horrible chicken scratching here, but just I'll draw it for you. You know, these Wooners roads kind of wind like that. They create these nodes in the public right away. And he said, what if we were to rent that to a chip truck or to an artist or to a patio or something like that? We could make money with our rights of way. And in Ottawa, we're starting to do that. We charge $200 per square meter for patios that encroach on city property. So let's do the same thing. So we're actually building a suburb in Ottawa like this, with 1.5 kilometers of road, and we've got enough of these nodes that we can generate $126,000 per year, which is just enough to pay the cost of a $2.1 million road. So there you go. So revise your zoning codes. You want to create live, work, play, learn, shop, grow, make, create walkable communities that prioritize people over cars. Cars are welcome. It's just that they're second priority. Let's slow them down. And let's see if we can find some new revenue streams, because you guys need money to do good stuff. All right? 40% of the buildings in Manhattan could not be built today. Zoning codes have changed so much. I was blown away by this. And when I take entrepreneurs, today I don't do as much development as I used to, but when I take entrepreneurs to meet your planners, the very first, and this is everywhere, the very first words that come out of their mouths is, we have concerns. I hear that over and over again, we have concerns. Stop saying that, please. Let's do this. How can we make it happen? Appoint a facilitator in your community and get him or her to see if this is something your town wants, if it's good for your town. Let's find ways to make it happen. In November of 2016, after 30 years of lobbying, the city of Ottawa approved the backyard coach house. It's now legal to build a backyard coach house. It used to be called Granny Flat. And I did a little homework on it. I lobbied for the basement apartment for about 20 years, and then another 10 years to get the coach house approved. All of it's approved now. If 20% of the housing stock in US and Canada added a coach house, the GDP in those two countries would go up by $1.8 trillion. So the stuff that I'm telling you to at least consider works. And this was a study that came out last year from the University of Chicago. This blew my mind. If zoning codes were as permeable and permissive in 2009 as they were 45 years earlier, the US economy would be 1/3 larger, which represents $85,000 or $86,000 per year for a family of four, more money. It just blows my mind. So when I say that our zoning codes are leading us in the wrong direction, you may not agree with me, that's your right, but I believe that. Here's somebody, James Howard Kunstler, if you want to read anything, any book that really summarizes some of the stuff that I'm talking about today, Home from Nowhere by James is a fantastic book. He said anybody who travels back and forth across the Atlantic has to be impressed with the difference between European cities, Portuguese cities, and ours, which make it appear as though World War II actually took place in Detroit and Washington rather than Berlin and Rotterdam. And they put two pictures here. Which one is Berlin, which one is Detroit? Anybody want to guess? There you go. So review your OP and your zoning code. Try and get your planners to buy in. Use your levers of power to create public-private partnerships to get some of this done, because you can't do it all on your own. And if a project, big or small, can demonstrate that it provides a net benefit to your community, see if your facilitator and your people can make it happen. Bill Leatham, who used to be the Commissioner of Planning in the City of Nepean, when there was a City of Nepean, it got amalgamated away, used to take a small project or a big project. If he thought it was of net benefit, he would call his planners in, his transportation people, his infrastructure people, and said, look, let's make this happen. I built Blue Heron Storage, which is a little mini storage place a long time ago. One of those little, open the garage door, throw your stuff in. And I built a bungalow in front, because I like mixed use, right? And Bert and Lynn LaRange manage it for me. They live upstairs. The bottom is rented. In 12 years, we've never had any theft, never had any vandalism. However, when you talk to planners today, they say, oh no, you can't have industrial and housing, it doesn't mix. Well, that's not true. You can go down 1,000 roads in rural Ontario, in Montana, in the Dakotas, and you'll see mom and pop are working here, and they've got some kind of shop in the backyard. This is John Dozwa showing me K-Tech, another client of mine in Kingston, Ontario. They make little tiny houses that are great. You can buy them for 85,000 Canadian dollars. Fantastic, that's an ad. And this is what the park looks like. Okay? Yeah? All right. Here's a friend of mine. He runs an HVAC company, Nick Kaczmar, in Kemple, another small town. And there's his house. And look what you find behind his house. A workshop. This is what I get 3 or 4 serious calls a month from people who want this. And here's Nick in his loft, right? Celebrating that he can live and work on the same property. This is my bad animation. I'm an engineer, so I can't really draw. So here we are, we have an industrial park, and I bet you within 1,000 kilometers here, we probably have hundreds of these industrial parks that have one little only building here, like this building here, and hasn't had a new build in 20 years. So I decided to add a little restaurant, right? So I went from this to this. And your planners would say, oh no, you can't have commercial, it's industrial. But you can. People want a place to eat and sit in the patio for a few months anyway. Oh, and maybe some of the people working that Acme plant could live above that. And then maybe you could allow some info. I'm telling you, this is the ticket, in my opinion, to revitalizing your industrial parks, to allow mixed use. I'm not talking about heavy industry, not petrochemicals and pulp and paper mills and residential. I'm talking about light industrial use, like what Nick Catchmore does. Now this is a proposal that you guys may absolutely not want to even think about, but a lot of cities and towns, not just in Canada, are doing this. They're issuing Canadian Tire money, only they call them, in this case, the Cochrane dollar, the Tamworth dollar, the Calgary dollar, the Kawartha loon, and Salt Spring has inflation, I guess it's $5. I think every city and town should have its own currency, the Thunder Bay Superior dollar, right? I'm going to put it into the new official plan in the city of Ottawa, the O-Town dollar. And the city will issue it. You can't just have some guy with a printing press in his basement, although it would be nice in my basement, printing a million O-Town dollars. This is a real currency. It's one O-Town dollar to one Canadian dollar. And with that, the city could reward volunteer hours, compensate for disasters, flood disasters, could help pay people who are serving on committees, could provide housing allowances, maybe startup capital to some of the entrepreneurs who need some help. Maybe you could pay your mentors and coaches, maybe help some of your students pay down their debt. And there's something else that's going on in Canada, the United States, and in many, many, many countries. Most Western democracies, this is an endangered species. This is the real endangered species, in my opinion. And when I was in Stockholm, I was teaching at the Hyper Island Institute, I noticed every woman either had a baby or was having a baby or was thinking about having a baby. There's a huge, huge baby boom in Stockholm. You know why? The Swedish government gives every woman who wants to have a baby a year off of 50,000 euros. That's real money. And if you have another baby the next year, they get another year off, another 50,000 euros, right? So I said, well, why? Why are these people having babies and Canadians are not? We have, I think, 1 or 1.1. I think it's at least partly related to money. Here's Philip and Tiffany Rivers, and they have 9 kids. And if anybody's clever, you'll count only 8 on this, but I think Tiffany had another baby last month. So there's 9 now. And he plays for the LA Chargers, the National Football League team, and his salary this year was $21 million US. I think money does matter. So what I'm going to try and get into our new official plan is the O-Town dollar, and we're going to give every new mom 1,000 O-Town dollars a month from the time the baby is born until the child is 18. And that's going to make a difference. And you're going to say, well, why would anybody, what can you do with those O-Town dollars? Well, here's what you do. You go to the grocery store and they say, we accept O-Town dollars here. But the grocery store will say, oh, no, we don't do that. We just want cash. So everybody goes to this store. Pretty soon, that store is accepting. Right? I coach. So somebody hires me and gives me $100, 10 minutes. Somebody gives me $100, and I need a plumber. The plumber will say, happy to accept O-Town dollars. It's a real currency. It'll be both in paper form and digital. I would have said cryptocurrency, except that's, can't say that, that's a bad word. Digital and paper form. So we can rescue ourselves, right? Let's not wait for the province to rescue your town. Let's not wait for the Justin Trudeau and the federal government to rescue you guys. Let's rescue ourselves. Here's something I did for the township of McNabb Braeside. I'm doing some work for them. It's about an 8,000 person township, and they have a problem. 10% of their annual budget, $600,000 a year, they're spending on maintaining 18 beautiful parks. And I went there on the most beautiful July weekend, and I took pictures, and in 2 days of visiting 18 parks, there wasn't a single kid anywhere. Not a lonely kid with a baseball bat or a soccer ball, nothing. And it's because of a program called, I'll call Eyes on the Park. Here is Central Park in New York City. It's a hugely successful park. Why? Because there's houses around it, there's offices around, there's eyes on the park. And if soccer mom comes to visit your park, and there are no facilities there, she can't go to the bathroom there, she can't get food and beverage, she can't get a drink, she'll never come back, she'll just run away. And people say, well, you can't have commercial parks, that's a travesty. Well, I visited my sister in Vancouver, and we ran the seawall, and we stopped at the tea house. It's a beautiful part of Stanley Park. It doesn't detract, it enhances the park. So I am not accepting some of the urban planners' view that parks are perfect when there's nobody using them. Here's another example. This is Britannia Beach in Ottawa, the Baja Burger Shack. So they have 18 parks, $600,000 annual upkeep, 10% of the budget as mentioned, 8,000 people. We're going to add 300 one-acre lots around these parks, and we're going to land lease them. We're not going to sell them. We're going to land lease them at $375 a month. So a young couple like Kayla and JC don't have to come up with $100,000 to buy a lot, or $50,000 to buy a lot. If they can find $375 a month, they can have a long-term land lease and they can build something on. That will produce a new income stream for McNabb Braeside, $1.35 million a year. Enough to take care of their parks, plus a lot more. All right, so policy prescription here: empower your entrepreneurs, be creative, harness your entrepreneurs, make better use of your parks. And what you're looking for is CMRR. Whether it's a tech business or a business like mine or your township, you're looking for committed monthly recurring revenues. Think about those land lease revenues. That's $1.3 million a year for McNabb Braeside forever. And not just, Ottawa didn't just introduce the coach house bylaw, they spent a lot of time and effort educating people. So don't just do something great, tell people, you know, you want to get reelected, right? And you also want to energize your community. Here's a coach house I'm building in my backyard. It's a little 2-bedroom. You can see it here. The basement has 3 offices and a reception. That's where my coaching practice will go. And this is kind of a sketch of what it will look like. Now for the big reveal. We've been working on a project. It's available. It's open IP, open source. It's called the GIGAPLEX. And the tagline is home free. It's a home for free. So if any of you build a GIGAPLEX, as you'll see in a minute, you can put an ad on Kijiji or Craigslist saying, anybody out there would like to rent a nice 2-bedroom for me, free. You think you'll get any answers? Get any takers? It's called home free. So I call it home free for 2 reasons. One, it's a free home, but also it reminded me of being a kid. You guys played hide and seek when you were a kid? Right? And when you ran home, what did you scream out? Come on, say it out loud.
Home free.
Home free. A little bit louder. Come on, help me out.
Home free!
Yeah, it's great. It was a wonderful moment. You've got home free. And I was thinking about calling it a megaplex, but mega's only millionaire. So I upgraded my status to billionaire. So giga stands for billion. And it also stands for the gig economy. Now let's look at this floor plan one more time. You'll notice, I don't know if you can see it, but there's 2 bedrooms here. The bedroom that's furthest from me is actually a micro suite with its own door to the outside world. That's the key to this. So Kristen here leases this to me, this 2-bedroom, for $1,500 a month. Thank you very much. I move in and she gives me, as the landlord, she gives me permission to sublet that. Let's flip through those. To sublet that, I can bring in an elder and take care, if I'm a PSW, I can take in an elder and take care of her. Maybe I charge her $2,000 a month. Or I can run my RMT, registered massage therapy, or my nail bar, or my home physiotherapy, and put it on Airbnb. So think about that. Kristen rents it to me for $1,500 a month. I bring in an elder, charge her $2,000 a month. I'm living for a negative cost, right? $500. And in fact, we do one more thing. We give the landlord, in this case you, Kristen, we give you 15% of those revenues. So you rented it to me for $1,500, you get 15% of those revenues that I'm generating from that micro suite under your permission. So the landlord makes even more money and the tenant lives for free. This is going to be a big thing. And it will work in Thunder Bay, it will work in Ottawa, it will even work in San Francisco. So let's try and solve the affordable housing problem with innovation. not banning the sharing economy, not banning vacation rental by owner or Airbnb, not banning Uber and Lyft. Let's not just go to the provincial government and say endless handouts for operating costs and capital costs. Let's start something different and new. And what I would like to do is I wanted to draft all of you, every one of you today, into the fee hedge movement. And that's not my term. That is a term coined by Isabel Bradbury, an architect in Quebec, for every home a job. Thank you very much.
On behalf of the NOMA, present you with this gift.
Thank you so much. Wait, you can't all leave yet. Just give me one more second. I would have rather had the printing press for the Thunder Bay Dollar. Now, having said that, I did bring 2 copies of business model illustration. I would have brought more, but Porter doesn't allow you to bring anything more than a purse. So you're all going to get e-copies of it. I did bring 2, and I did get permission from Kristen to sort of raffle it off, sort of. So I got 2 skill testing questions, if I can remember what they are. Oh yeah, maybe I can't. Yeah, I do have it. How many times did the Maple Leafs beat the Senators in a playoff series in a row?
Where's Bill Morrow?
How many times did the Maple Leafs beat the Senators in? No. Put up your hand. No. No. Sir. No. No. No.
8.
No.
8. They never played each other.
Sir in the back. No.
7. 9.
No.
10.
14.
No. Sir.
Did he ever play?
Yes.
Sorry, what was the question?
Sorry, Kristen. All right, Matt, what's your answer? 4. Correct. Okay, I got one more. Now you guys are going to get this one. I hope. Excuse me, if you want, just before I leave, I will sign it for you. If you want to meet me outside. And it costs $100 too.
Horton Payne doll.
No, the book is free. The autograph is on the book. Just kidding. Okay. How many times have the Bruins beaten the Leafs in a playoff series in a row?
All of them.
Yeah, that's true, but that's not the number. 3. Come on up here, sir.
Keynote told you that.
Thank you all again.